Let's talk about the Cobra Effect, or better known as perverse incentives. You see, an incentive is the strongest force in the world. Think about it. The things we do every day, working a job or building a business, finding a mate, taking care of our health, are driven on the basis of an incentive to survive, garner resources, and have progeny. Money, sex, good health, and heaven, if you're deeply religious, are some of the strongest, if not the strongest forms of incentives that drive our day-to-day behavior. Based on this premise of incentives and behaviors, let's try to understand how a system can produce unintended consequences or the opposite of the intended outcome it was looking to achieve due to being constructed in a faulty way. Let's take the example of the British Raj from 1858 to 1947. State officials needed a solution to the growing crisis of venomous cobra snakes in the capital of India, Delhi. Their solution to this problem was to reward a bounty for every captured dead snake. At first, this strategy seemed like a success. Locals were showing up day after day with buckets full of slain venomous cobras, leaving with pockets full of cash. With time, however, exploitative locals, realizing how much income they were generating through this bounty program, decided to breed cobras as a business, having the exact opposite effect that was intended by the initial policy, which was to reduce the venomous cobra population. As a result, the cobra population soared to levels never seen before. This phenomenon, the Cobra Effect, also termed perverse incentives, can be found in many systems we construct, from electoral campaigns, welfare and humanitarian policies, business organizations, and even relationships in our own lives. These incentives inadvertently design the original objective, to reduce cobras, to the exact opposite outcome we were looking for. Let's talk about some real examples. Canada, with its goals to increasingly collect higher tax revenues to fund its ongoing debt and social expenditures, has some of the highest relative income and corporate tax rates, especially when you're in the higher brackets. What happens as a result? Your largest source of revenues, your top earners, like your doctors, founders, innovators, they leave the country, leaving you with a smaller income-based tax, resulting in increased deficits and worse-off public services, the opposite of the intended outcome. Immigration policy. With the goal to increase skilled people within the country, Canada has some or a point system in place where immigrants can migrate here and get permanent residency based on merit. There exists, however, a side door or a loophole to get to permanent residency without merit. That is, through temporary residency, where you don't have to be a skilled worker. The result? Many colleges exploited this loophole and sold foreigners a way to get to permanent residency through being international students and having post-graduation work permits. The catch was, not only did colleges benefit financially, regardless of the outcome of their foreign students, if they got permanent residency or not, they did it by selling foreigners education that didn't fit the need of Canada's labor market, resulting in a glut of low-skilled workers. This also hurt the prospects of actual skilled foreigners that couldn't obtain permanent residencies because of the increase in the pool of applicants. Not to mention the second and third order effects of increased housing costs, strain on the social system and public infrastructure, and less entry-level jobs for Canadians. A perverse incentive that had the exact opposite outcome of what our policy intended. Getting off of Canada, privatized healthcare also has perverse incentives, especially in the US. Healthcare practitioners get paid mainly for treatment, not prevention. If the incentives are aligned as such, why bother on prevention? An extreme example of this was in 2015, where a Detroit-based doctor was sentenced to 45 years in prison for providing patients unnecessary cancer treatment, which he made $18 million off. Another macro real-world example was in 2002. The effort to compensate Afghan farmers to destroy their crops with hopes of subduing opium production backfired on British officials. Farmers responded to this incentive by growing more poppy crops to qualify for compensation, and in some cases, even harvesting the crop or selling the opium for profit before destroying it. Think of the perverse incentives we have in our own lives. Scrolling social media with the goal of informing ourselves only to consume one-sided, contextless propaganda, being more misinformed than before. Rewarding ourselves with a cheat meal if we eat healthy for a week, only to have the most decadent cheat meal possible, reversing all our progress. Or cashback and reward programs make us chase negligible points, making us spend more than we would. Perverse incentives cause excess and inefficiencies that we can otherwise do without. A simple solution would be to reverse engineer these excesses. That is, focusing on the prevention of suboptimal outcomes. On a nation-state level, how to prevent economic stagnancy where productivity isn't increasingly levied. On a personal level, how to prevent overindulging on the cheat meal. Or how to prevent the allure of being informed by endless scrolling. Figuring out the points of failure and having a contingency plan for them can be, albeit difficult, a prudent way to avoid the pitfalls of incentivizing perversion. Thank you for listening.